You know, the most fundamental prayer in Islam is actually really simple but so profound. It's a plea, just asking to be guided to a straight path. But what does that even mean? What is that path? And what's the guidebook for the journey? Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to explore the prayer that kicks everything off and the book that claims to be its answer.
So, this is the big question, right? The straight path. And it's not just, a list of do's and don'ts. It's about getting your entire outlook on life right. It's a way of thinking, a way of acting that's meant to shield you from all the noise, the false ideas, the confusion out there. This is the journey we're about to map out.
All right, so our journey starts with the very first chapter of the Quran, Al-Fatiha. And what's interesting is, it isn't a command or a story. It's a prayer, a straight-up petition to the Creator, asking for the one thing that truly matters above all else, guidance. Okay, so the text explains that when you start anything by saying God's name, it's not just some empty ritual. It's a moral act. It forces you to pause and ask yourself, hey, is what I'm about to do, is this really worthy of being associated with the divine? It completely sets your mental compass in the right direction from the get-go.
So, who exactly are we talking to in this prayer? The text uses a specific word, Rabb. And look, this isn't just a simple synonym for God. It's a word that defines a whole relationship. He's the master we owe our allegiance to, the provider who literally sustains our existence, and the sovereign who's in charge of the entire universe. It's the whole package.
You know, the text suggests God's mercy is so vast that one word just doesn't cut it. It breaks it down into two distinct ideas. You have Rahman, which is this intense, built-in quality of mercy that's just part of his nature. Then you have Rahim, which is the action of that mercy, the expression of it, something that's always on, always flowing, infinitely.
And then the prayer gets really specific. You alone do we worship. Now the word for worship here is ibadah, and this word is an absolute powerhouse. It means you're giving your total adoration, your absolute obedience, and your complete life service exclusively to the Creator. It's an acknowledgement that nothing else, no one else, is even worthy of that.
And boom, here's the climax of the whole prayer, the specific ask. It's not a request for some brand new, untested path. It's a plea to join a road that's already been traveled, one walked by people who actually earned God's favor. And this path is set against the path of those who might look successful on the outside, the powerful oppressors of history, but whose success is ultimately empty.
Okay, so the prayer has been sent up. The request is in. So what's the answer? Well, the text doesn't make you wait. It immediately transitions into the next chapter, Surah al-Baqarah, and basically presents it as the guidebook for the very path you just asked for.
So the first thing this guidebook does is lay its cards on the table. It says, look, this isn't human philosophy. It's not just a bunch of speculation about reality. Instead, it presents itself as being grounded in absolute, undeniable truth, because it comes from the all-knowing God. It's not guessing, it's stating.
But here's the catch, right? The guidance in this book isn't some magic spell that just zaps you when you read it. Nope. The text makes it crystal clear that to really benefit from it, to unlock its wisdom, you've got to have certain qualities first. So, what are they? All right, the book lays out 5 key qualities you need to have. First, you've got to believe in the unseen, accepting that there are realities beyond what our 5 senses can pick up. Second, you establish prayer, which is the practical, physical sign of your obedience. Third, you spend for God's cause, showing that money isn't your master. Fourth, you believe that all the previous prophets, they all received pieces of the very same truth. And finally, number 5, you have a rock-solid faith in the afterlife, a deep understanding that this life is a test with very real consequences. Now, of course, just having the guidebook doesn't mean you're automatically going to reach your destination, right? The text is also very real about the major pitfalls, the barriers that can completely block a person from finding and, just as importantly, staying on the path.
So the guidebook basically breaks people down into 3 main groups. First, you have the pious. Their motivation is sincerity and they're guided by truth. Simple enough. Then you have the rejectors. And the text is really specific here. Their hearts are sealed, not because God just decided to, but as a direct result of their own choice to deliberately turn away. And finally, you have the most complicated group, the hypocrites. Their whole game is deception and self-interest. They act like believers on the surface, but underneath, they're just spreading disorder. To really get why people make these choices, the book rewinds all the way back to the very beginning, to humanity's purpose. And it introduces this massive concept called Khalifa, or vicegerency.
What this means is that humans are created to be God's deputies here on earth. The power we have isn't our own, it's delegated authority, and it comes with a serious set of rules and responsibilities.
And this incredible status is immediately put to the test in the story of Adam. See, when God showed the angels that Adam had a special kind of knowledge, this ability to integrate information, they all accepted it. But Iblis, or Satan, he refused, purely out of arrogance. And in that moment, he became the first to defy this whole divine plan.
Okay, so what happens when Adam makes a mistake and is led astray? This is where the story introduces another crucial idea, tauba, or repentance. And it's not just about saying, my bad. It's a conscious, deliberate act of turning back towards God. And here's the beautiful part. God's forgiveness is shown as an act of pure grace. It proves that a mistake doesn't have to be a dead end. Even on the straight path, you might take a wrong turn, but there's always a way to get back on track.
All right, so after that primordial story, the guidebook shifts gears. It moves into historical stories, basically presenting the history of past nations as a series of case studies, real-world lessons on what to do, and maybe, more importantly, what not to do on the straight path.
A huge chunk of this section focuses on the children of Israel. The text recounts these immense, incredible favors they received. I mean, they were saved from Pharaoh, they were miraculously given food, manna and quails right in the middle of the desert. They were literally given everything they needed to succeed.
But all of that divine grace was met with this unbelievable act of ingratitude. While their own prophet Moses was up on the mountain receiving the law from God, they were down below, melting gold and worshiping a calf statue. This moment becomes this powerful, timeless symbol of rebellion and completely forgetting where your blessings come from.
So where did this moral decay come from? The text explains it was an inside job. It describes how some of their own religious scholars started engaging in tahrif, which means they were knowingly distorting the meaning of their own scriptures. Think about that. They weren't just misinterpreting by accident. They were actively changing the truth for a little bit of worldly gain, basically selling out divine guidance for a tiny price.
And all of this leads to a really profound lesson. The text pivots to Abraham, holding him up as the true model of leadership. Why? Because his leadership wasn't a birthright. It was earned. It was granted only after he passed some incredibly difficult tests and proved his absolute submission to God. The guidebook is crystal clear on this. God's promise of leadership doesn't extend to wrongdoers, and it doesn't matter who your ancestors were.
So, after all these stories, all these lessons, what's the end goal? What are we striving for? The text introduces this absolutely beautiful concept, Sibgat Allah, which translates to the color of Allah. The idea here is that true faith isn't just a label you wear or a box you tick on a form. It's supposed to be something that colors your entire being, your thoughts, your actions, your whole character.
And that color is meant to be universal. The call here is to stop drawing these artificial lines between the prophets, to recognize that they were all teaching the same fundamental straight way. It was later generations who came along and built up these walls of sectarian identity around them. The message is simple. The substance of your devotion matters so much more than the external label you give it.
And that brings us right back to where we started. The prayer was for a path. The guidebook describes that path. It tells you what you need to walk it, it warns you about the pitfalls, and it shows you the history of those who came before. And in the end, it leaves us with this one powerful question to really think about. Is your faith just a title you claim, or is it the actual path you walk every single day?